Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Favors Single Life Tips. So we are still on the viral post about the guy who says that when he gets a decent job, he's going to leave his current girlfriend and start dating his types. He's also the same one who suggests that his current girlfriend shouldn't feel entitled to his life, while at the same time, ironically, feeling entitled to her life to waste her time. So in previous audio lessons, I talked about risk assessment, and then I talked about preventing entitlement. And so in this discussion, I want to talk about gap assessment. Gap assessment is a business term, but I want to apply it to romantic relationships. I also apply it to finances in other audio lessons. So gap assessment, a method of assessing the differences between the actual performance and expected performance. Refers to the gap between where we are, which is your present state, and where we want to be, which is your target state. So I'm going to read the tweet here and then apply the concept of gap assessment. I can't believe my girlfriend really think that I'm going to marry her and we'll live happily ever after. Soon as I get a decent job, I'm going to leave her and start dating my types. People need to understand that we're not entitled to be with them forever just because they were with us when we were broke. We each have our own preference, and that doesn't make me love my current girlfriend any less. Things change, feelings change. It is a vicious life cycle. If my girl could leave me for a guy who's well established and appreciates her more than I do, I would gladly accept and never hold her hostage just because she's been with me through thick and thin. This entitlement over people's lives is the reason people resort to violent behavior. And again, I always like to call attention to that last sentence in the last paragraph about violent behavior, and that violent behavior within the romantic relationship context can definitely be avoided if you just don't date the person that you don't want to be with. When you date options and not your preferences, and you waste the time of options, then of course you're going to um, sort of encourage violent behavior, because this person thought all this time they were building a relationship with you. So that's why I think applying the concept of gap assessment has some is appropriate, because it gives you an opportunity to see where you are in your current romantic relationship and where you want to be and what the gap is, right? So for instance, if we look at the actual performance of this relationship, the current girlfriend is operating on this assumption in the current time, in her present time, that there's going to be a marriage at the end of the road. The assumption is, if I basically invest in him while he gets himself together, then I know he's going to propose and I know we're going to be married, and then therefore I'm going to get a return on my investment. Well, so then she will actually perform all different types of investment strategies. She'll cook, she'll clean, she'll have sex with him, she'll fund his education, she'll fund his business. She'll do all that she can, all in the name and under the guise of investment, with the intended goal, with the expected performance, that he will actually marry her, walk her down the aisle and marry her in front of the minister. So her actual performance, there's a gap between her actual performance and her expected performance, because according to the guy, he has no intent on marrying her. And when you look at his actual performance, he's basically an actor in this relationship. He's going to act like he's a boyfriend, because even though he throws in the word love and gives the girl a title of girlfriend, that's just to sort of act out a role as if he's on a television show or in a film. His actual performance is going to be an actor. And we always like to say how people show up as their representative first. I think he has skipped to the he has skipped past the representative. He's now just acting out. So he'll act out those times when they're laughing and playing and having sex and watching TV, and sometimes contributing, maybe buying some food, maybe bringing home some flowers. That's not going to be a consistent thing, especially the romancing aspect of the relationship, because even though he has every plan to leave and he can act out any role he wants to while he's in the relationship, he knows on some level that if he goes too far, she's going to think too far ahead. And so then there's the gap in both their understanding, both their assumptions. She believes that it's going to convert to long term. He knows beyond a shadow of a doubt it's not going to convert to long term, because he's already saying that she's not his type. He said, when I get a decent job, I'm going to leave her and start dating my type. So that means she's not even a preference. So her assumption all this time, her actual performance, she's actually performing like she is his type. Because women do not invest in relationships if they don't think they're going to get a return. They would not wake up every day and say, I'm just going to do all I can to make this man love me, because um, even though he's showing me all these different ways that he doesn't, I just know I can make him love me. Sure, on some level, they may act that out because they may be trying to convince themselves, but you'd be hard pressed to hear them say that. What they might say, however, is, I'm going to be there for him. I'm going to be his ride or die. I'm going to love him. He can depend upon me. But the gap is, as soon as you say he can depend upon me, you immediately run to the assumption that I know that I can depend upon him, which is a lie. And that the gap is, you're not accepting the lie that is staring you right in front of your face. How many times has he abandoned you? How many times has he not come home? How many times has he left you? Because eventually it's going to lead to some form of abandonment. But before it gets to the physical, the escalation of that, meaning the person kicks you out of the car, leaves you on the side of the road, comes, packs their bags and walks out. Before it gets to that point, they have done little things up to that. They weren't a person of their word. Somehow they spent all their money and they couldn't come back home and contribute to the rent. You have to threaten to kick them out in order for them to pay something in the house. And then the way they resolve the problem is by distracting you and blinding you to their real intent by giving you sex. Sometimes they'll hop in the shower with you, they'll kiss on you, they'll make good love to you. You got some folks who would do you dirty, but they tend to be good lovers. And so that confuses you, because you think, well, why would somebody make love to me if they didn't love me? Because they just so happen to be good lovers. And so then the actual performance versus the expected performance, you think that because he's making good love to you, that is going to last. His current way of making good love to you is going to be something that when you cross over into marriage, that's going to be the expected performance. But you have to cross over into marriage. And the gap is, you're not going to cross over into marriage. Because he's saying here, when I get a decent job, I'm leaving her. I don't know why she thinks I'm going to marry her. And all this time, you've been thinking that your partner is going to marry you if you do this, if you do that, if you do this, if you do that, when he's telling you that. And somewhere on the path, he's already told you that he's not going to marry you in different ways. One of the ways that I've noticed and I've experienced myself is they'll use language like, let's just wait. Let's wait for a while. Let me get myself together. I don't have the right kind of job. Let me get myself together first, and then I'll marry you. It's all these conditionals. And then they may, to prolong their lie, they may begin suggesting that if you do this, if you do that, if you do this, I mean, if you were doing this, I'm telling you right now, I would have married you. I mean, if you lose some weight, if you, I mean, If you cooked the way I wanted you to cook, I would have married you a long time ago. It's these crazy little conditionals that they come up with, and all that is just to prolong, procrastinate as long as they can until they find the person that they really want to be with. So the gap in this situation would be the idea that you thought it was going to, the assumption that if you invest, it's going to convert um, into marriage, meaning that you get a return on your investment, which is not going to. Another assumption, another gap in your thinking is that you've been thinking all this time you've been a preference when you have not been a preference the whole time. You're not even an option. I mean, you could be an option, but if someone is willing to utilize violent behavior against you, that means you're not even an option. You're just essentially a placeholder until he finds the person that he wants to find. Interesting thing is that he does have some understanding about the fact that he doesn't have a decent job. Now, we don't know if he has a job. He's saying that when I get a decent job. So let's assume that he has a job, but it's not a decent job in order to take care of a family, right? To be a true provider. Then his actual performance would be where he is right now, okay, in terms of his current job status and where he wants to go. And his expected performance is that decent job, and that decent job is going to produce a consequence of leaving the current girlfriend and finding his type, because the current girlfriend seems to accept him for who he is without a decent job. Because if he's with her, she's accepting his minimal, whatever he brings to the table, even if it's not completely 50-50 or whatever, she will accept it. And a lot of times when they want to go 50-50, it's really that they want you to pay 80 and they pay 20 and they barely pay the 20. And so his actual performance with the woman is to be an actor, and the expected performance is going to be that he's going to be an adult. He's no longer going to be an actor. He's going to move out, leave the current girlfriend, and do right by someone else who put in no time, who invested no time, because he's using the current girlfriend to get himself together emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, psychologically, etc. So that means he's not where he wants to be in that regard. That's his actual. And so his expected is to become what he envisions for himself. So that tells you that he knows how to envision a different future. It's just that he doesn't want to envision a different future with the current girlfriend. So when he gets a decent job, he's going to shower the current girlfriend with his very best. But whatever he has right now is what he's going to give to his current girlfriend. So the new girl is going to get the best. The old girl, the current girlfriend, gets his potential. And we always say, or we are always learning, never date somebody at their potential. Date them where they are right now. And if you look at the current girlfriend and her attitude towards him, and he calls it entitlement, it's interesting that she will continue to stay with a person who is broke, because he said people need to understand that we're not entitled to be with them forever just because they were with us when we were broke. She was willing to stick it out with him without the decent job and while he's broke. And she likely convinced herself that if I just hold on, if I just pay some of the bills, if I do this or whatever, I know he's going to be the type of man I'm envisioning, because he got something going for himself. And so then she's operating also in some sort of actor's role. She's not looking at the situation for what it really is. He doesn't have a decent job. He's broke. And so therefore, why is he living with me if he doesn't have a decent job and he's broke? That means that if I wasn't around and there wasn't anybody else around, then he could not take care of himself as an adult. So then why would I engage anyone who could not take care of themselves as an adult. Why can't the person go out and go get themselves together first, even if they have to go live with a family member, go get themselves together, save some money, and then let's talk about a relationship? We always put this cart before the horse, and we are 100% responsible for ourselves as an adult. And when people move into your house, especially men into a woman's house, when they don't have a decent job and they are broke and they feel entitled to the woman's resources, house, shelter, everything, that tells you that they are not ready for romantic relationships, because for him, he's not going to be ready until he has a decent job and he's no longer broke. Then he will be ready for a real adult relationship. He's going to do all of the investing in his new relationship. And so here it is. We are just surrounded by gaps in our thinking because we love to do things out of order. If we can just go ahead and make it work now, let's just try to make it work. Let's go ahead and move in together, and then we just work it out later. But gaps in your thinking always show up somewhere. They show up in your finances. They show up in how you manage your emotions, regulate your emotions, how you uh, understand your faith, um, how you mentally process, intellectually process things, right? And so they always show up. So when he's saying things change, feelings change, it is a vicious life cycle. Like I said in a previous audio, he already has it in his mind that he's going to change. He's just not letting her in on the secret. He already, when he moved in, actually, when he met her, when he met the current girlfriend, he knew he wasn't going to stay with her. He wasn't going to keep her. But he'll put up with the situation, tolerate the situation until he can do better. And so this goes to this idea of a gap in our understanding about how women should deal with men. That the women today, who are even professional women, are treating the men like kids as an obvious strategy, but they have become almost the Medias, the Nanas, the big mamas, that they're not even seen as women anymore. They're seen as someone that they can hug on to, hold on to, fight against, challenge, ask for something, and then once they get themselves together, they go on ahead and leave. And that's very sad because things change. He's suggesting that it's going to change once he gets a decent job, and he basically realizes that I really want a different woman. No, he thought this way at the beginning of the relationship, even when he got with her. Once he created an argument for change, he just continued to roll in that understanding. And so every decision that he makes, from the moment that he decides that he's not going to stay with her because she's not his type, and that he's going to seek the type that he wants, he supports that decision with money, with strategy. He's probably dating behind the current girlfriend's back. He's calling people, cultivating relationships, because people are often not strong enough to leave the current relationship and move on, exit it completely, uh, leave no opportunity for reconciliation, and just go on into the unknown and just work it out. What they do instead is they keep the current girlfriend or current boyfriend at arm's length, keep that situation at arm's length until they secure the person that they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they want to begin dating, at least. Maybe not marriage, but at least dating. And what people often do also is, they once they find the person that they want to find, is still considered an unknown, untested, unpredictable situation. So they will still keep the current girlfriend at arm's length, even though you're supposed to be completely broken up. They will keep the current girlfriend at arm's length and sort of work out as long as they can with the new girlfriend, going out on dates, talking on the phone, having sex, or they may have sex with the ex-girlfriend so they look like a gentleman with the new girlfriend. And here it is. The current girlfriend thinks when he's coming back for having sex, for having sex, that they are moving towards something. That they, oh, he knew he wanted to still be with me. He can't get enough of me. He still loves me. I mean, he did tell me he loved me at one time before, so I knew he wanted me. I know we gonna get married. So, and then the whole investment strategy begins again. And here we are left still with another gap in our understanding that it is not a relationship that is going to convert to marriage. That's why he says, I can't believe my girlfriend really think that I'm going to marry her. And the only way that she would get that kind of understanding is if he also led her to believe that. Now, women can conjure up and delude themselves and absolutely believe whatever they say in their head about a situation. I just know we're going to get married, and somehow they just absolutely believe it. They'll start shopping, they'll start planning a wedding, they'll start telling people everything. But she doesn't do that without his help in some kind of way. Somewhere he slips in, okay, yeah, let's get married, even if he's joking. And that's enough oftentimes for a woman until she wakes up. And so in this thing about the gap assessment, she's emotionally asleep if she can't see the situation for what it really is. Because no matter what, this attitude that he is displaying in the tweet, and this is actually multiple tweets. This attitude that he is displaying as a tweet is always matched with some kind of action. He's already because the body follows the mind, what the mind tells it. And so there are times that he probably provokes an argument and then they get mad at each other and then he goes off somewhere and stays gone for a minute. And then she worries while he's not there. And then he decides to come back home and they argue some more. And then they go to bed angry and somebody touches somebody else and then they have sex and then it looks like it's going to go back. It's back on. But if you look at what he's saying, what he's writing here, he has already made up his mind. That's a gap. Assessing gaps, because he's not at a place where, okay, I'm not quite sure, I'm not this or whatever. He may be telling her that I don't have a decent job, let's wait. But somewhere he's still telling her or intimating as much, I'm not going to marry you. You can say whatever you want to say. The fact that he tweeted this and he's talking about his current girlfriend has escalated. Somewhere he said whatever he said while he was in the house with her, but now he has gone public with this. And he didn't think she would see this, see his tweet. I'm quite sure she is a subscriber and a follower. And he didn't have enough sense to know that she would see this. So he tweets this publicly, and then they come home together, and it's supposed to be all good. Now, if she sees this and she still says in her heart, we're still going to get married, then there's nothing else that you can tell her until she comes to her own understanding. You would have to leave her to her devices because she's unwilling to receive it. And so then if she accepts the fact, if she reads this tweet and still accepts her understanding that is actually going to convert, then her actual performance is really delusion. And she's going to stay in sort of like a mental setback as an expected performance. And she will continue to stay in that kind of thinking all the way until he has married somebody else. And the way you know this to be true is that the person will always say, well, he was really supposed to marry me. We were trying to work things out and I really don't know what happened. And this girl just came along and she took my man. I don't know what happened. I thought she was my friend, or I thought it's some girl at the job. He started hanging out with her at lunch or something like that. And I just don't know how it turned from them just hanging out at lunch to him now wanting to be with her. He left me for her. And so she'll be in this expected performance of still trying to stay mentally where she thought she was in her actual performance. She did all that planning and investing to try to convert the relationship into marriage, and she's still married in her head, in her heart, while he's married to somebody else. Because remember, she's not his type. And so even if he tried to marry her, even if he went on ahead and married her, he wouldn't marry her in her heart. I mean, in his heart. And so he would still be looking. He will be married to her, but still have his heart and mind and finances open to the person that he really wants to be with, and that person doesn't have a face yet. He just has a longing to be with his type. So thinking about the method of assessing the differences between the actual performance and expected performance, one good method would be to sit down and do a pro and cons list, right? With the relationship. What are the pros of the relationship? What are the cons? One of those rows should be about a belief system. Is the person an emotional runner? That is very important, because even if he decided to stay, his ways of handling things is to leave when he finds his type. Not stay with someone who's actually invested in him, who has the character, who will help him with his goals, love him, be there for him. See, they'll leave the person that they really don't want to be with for someone who is their type, who does nothing for them. But when the man gets sick, that person who is his preference or his type will actually leave him. Because you can't do bad to get to better. You can't treat the current girlfriend like she's trash and not worthy of consideration for long-term relationship making. Abandon her, throw her over, leave her hanging, and go and do right by this new girl that you're thinking about. You can't do bad to get to better. You can't treat people badly and think you're going to get another person who's going to be good to you. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you can mess over somebody who could have been good to you for a lifetime while you are focusing on seasonal thinking. And so that's something that you want to think about too. So when we look at the gap between where we are, present state, and where we want to be, target state, and we're thinking about this idea that we are at this present state, that my boyfriend has left me for a girlfriend, for another woman who is his type. That's where we are. That's the present state. What do I do with myself? Because all this time I put in all this investment thinking that it was going to convert to something, and he's been fooling me the whole time. But then you have to assess yourself. Where have you fooled yourself? Because fools tend to be clear. Fool's going to act a fool. It doesn't take a fool a long time to be a fool. He's going to act a fool very early. We have to listen. We have to pay attention. We have to recognize it. We have to stop rationalizing it and calling it, oh, he's just being emotional. He's really going to change his mind. He's going to see that I'm good for him. All we have to do is just wait it out. Maybe I should do something, kind of differently in the bedroom. Maybe he's bored or something like that. I put on some slinky clothes for him and make him a meal. And if I just do all these different things, I just know it's going to convert. It's not going to convert because one person has a different belief system about the relationship. That's why the method of journaling the belief system is something that you definitely need to consider. You need, first about emotional running, second about financial planning. No man should just let a woman pay all the bills. If you have a man who is doing that, and he's not, say, in his 20s, here it is, he's in his 30s and 40s, because sometimes you may have to give people the benefit of the doubt in there. If you're both in your 20s, you're just starting out. You're trying to find your way. But by your 30s and your 40s, if you got a man living with a woman and he's not contributing, that is not the man to marry. You will always be the one who works 3, 4 jobs, try to have a little side business, try to do stuff for him and be there for him the rest of your life. Because no man who is just willing to let his woman do everything, especially financially, is worthy of any kind of relationship consideration. He doesn't have a good relationship with himself. Because if he had a good relationship with himself, he would have a good job. He would get a good job before he engaged the woman. He would already have had his own place and kept that place, and not have to ask people for money to pay for that place, but he would do it himself. And this guy who doesn't have a decent job, who is broke, has false love for his current girlfriend, and is only holding out hope to date his type, is the wrong person to even plan any kind of life with, because he's unstable. Because then when he leaves the current girlfriend who is stable and he moves in, because even if he has a decent job and he's broke, he's likely going to still move in with the new girlfriend. Because he's not saying, see, if he was saying, once I get a decent job, I'm going to get my own place. That's not his mindset. He hadn't said anything about, once I get a decent job and I come out of this broke status, I'm going to get my own place, because it's important for me to keep my own place as a man. That's where he is in his thinking. He's not an adult man. He's still a child living at his parents' house in his thinking. That's where he is. Because if he really thought enough to get his own place, he would write it. And then you could have some sympathy for him when he says, I can't believe my girlfriend really think I'm going to marry her. And he says, well, when I get a decent job, I'm going to get my own place and take some time to save money, and then I'll marry her, or then I consider marrying her. Well, that's a little different, because then he's thinking realistically. He's thinking logically. He's thinking more financially. He's thinking like an adult trying to get somewhere, using some common sense and saying to himself, I'm not where I need to be right now financially to make a decision about marriage. You can respect someone with that type of thinking. So where he is, his present state is still to move from relationship to relationship. Because there's nothing in him that's saying, I need to move from this relationship to my own place. She's still in this thinking that, and we don't have her voice. We can only imply what she is thinking. And if he's calling what she's thinking as entitlement, then that's where she is. She's in this ideal, and it's still his assumption, and it still represents his bias. But if she is staying and investing in this relationship, then by default and by implication, there must be a feeling of entitlement. And maybe people are just kind of throwing that term around, like privilege and entitlement and elite and all those different terms around, because they have become so popular today. But I also think on some level, people do not just throw around terms that have no true meaning. And if he's throwing around the term entitlement, then he has to be applying it to himself as well. That because you project what you think, even though you're saying it about someone else, it's really about you, and that you've actually been entitled all this time to her resources. That's where he is. Where he wants to be, his target state is to leave the ex-girlfriend, leave the current girlfriend, and date his type. Where she is, she's still in investment mode, thinking that it's going to convert to long term, but her target state is going to be marriage, but it's going to be a false sense of marriage because he's going to end up leaving. So it gets very, tricky, the gap assessment, because then he says, if my girl could leave me for a guy who's well established and appreciates her more than I do. So there is that gap, that she thinks he's been appreciating her all this time. He's saying that he hasn't been appreciating her all this time. I would gladly accept and never hold her hostage just because she's been with me through thick and thin. So she's been with him through thick and thin, but he hasn't really been with her through thick and thin, because if he was with her, if that was his mindset, he would write his mindset, because people want to get credit. People always want to get credit. I have been with you all this time. I've been doing for you just as much as you've been doing for me. We in this together. And so this entitlement over people's lives is the reason people resort to violent behavior. He's talking about himself in this sentence. He's mainly talking about himself, but he also doesn't understand that people can snap on you. Here it is. They have been investing all this time and being there for you and loving you and thinking that it's going to convert into something else, and you tell them that it's not. I know many of people. I don't have this personal experience, but I know someone. She gave all the time that she wanted to give to a marriage. This man came home one day and packed his bags and left. And he didn't just do that all of a sudden on that day. He packed his bags when he first got there. So that meant that he never had any intention of staying, not only in the marriage, but also not with her. He put a baby in her. He sold her a dream. She thought it was going to be something, going to turn into something or whatever. And he said no, because the person that he finally married, and he ended up divorcing. I mean, they ended up divorcing. But the person that he finally married came around. She finally came around. So he was using the woman that he was living with, and who was also a wife. He was using her to work on, while he worked on the woman that he really wanted to be with. This is the same kind of thinking that this guy in this tweet is going to leave his current girlfriend. So he's going to put on an actor's face, be a representative in this current relationship. That's where they are. That's his actual performance, and he's gonna do that for however long he can, and he's going to make it dependent upon, or make it conditional upon who he finds who will be his type. So that means he's going to begin dating his types, telling the current girlfriend that he's hanging out with the boys or something like that, but he's actually going out on dates. He's going to call her, they're going to meet, they're going to have sex, they're going to do whatever. And when it looks like it's a goal to go on ahead and move in with the new girlfriend, then he will let go of the ex-girlfriend. And if it looks like the ex-girlfriend won't let him go, then he would have to utilize violent behavior. And however way, it could be him getting up in her face, pushing her. She may have to call the police or whatever. And if it looks like the ex-girlfriend is going to call the new girlfriend and say, hey, what you doing with my man, is really going to escalate to violent behavior. But I believe if we conduct a gap assessment much earlier in the relationship, because if you think about it, the dating phase is more about discovery. It is not about sealing the deal. It's not about labeling the person as girlfriend or boyfriend. If we do more conversing, having conversation, going out to eat, not having sex with each other, talking, doing all that we can to gather intel, That's a gap assessment method that you could do to gather intel, because the gap is you don't know who the person you are in your current state, a person who wants to date. He is in his current state, a person who wants to date, but there's a gap. We don't know each other. We don't know what our actual performance would be and what our expected performance would be, because we don't know each other. We don't know where we are. Well, we will say this: we know that we are dating, and then where we want to be, we have to determine that individually. So if I'm dating, do I want to convert a date into something exclusive dating, and then do I want to convert exclusive dating to a relationship like boyfriend girlfriend, and do I want to then escalate it through processing to engagement and then marriage? So where we are versus where we want to be is something that we need to do on an individual basis. Why am I dating? What is the purpose of dating for me? Do I want to date for the next 5 years? That's fine if you want to do that. But if you want to get married, you do have to set the proper timing and proper limits and proper seasons. So she did not. So we can look at this from the girlfriend's standpoint and maybe challenge her decision making. She did not get a good understanding of who she was dealing with, because she should not be in a relationship with a guy who is saying that he's going to leave her and start dating his types. So if he is saying that, and to me the blame is really on him, because he really knows what he wants and it is not her. But if we are in relationships with people who are acting like we are not a good investment, that also says something about us not asking the right questions, maybe getting into relationships too hastily, maybe assuming too much, not having really definable goals, especially for dating. How long do I want to be a single? How long do I want to be a single to dating? How long do I want to be dating to married? We're not asking the right questions of ourselves first, because when you have standards, boundaries, and expectations, and you have core values, all of those are going to come to the forefront, and they're going to reveal themselves, and they're going to also show that the other person doesn't have standards, boundaries, expectations, nor does that person have core values. When we know who we are less likely to engage people who are not willing to invest. If I can leave you with that gap assessment, take some time to think about what it is, what goals you are setting, so you don't get with someone who doesn't align with your goals. If you are both dating, do not engage each other with the language and mindset of relationship making. Those are two different goals. Those are two different strategies. Those are two different methods. And if you are interested in marrying, you don't go around a bunch of singles. You go to marriage preparation context, so you know that everyone in the room uh, is a person who is interested in marriage, versus just picking somebody up at the bar, having a one night stand, and trying to convert the one night stand into a relationship and thinking that it's actually going to turn into a marriage. No, because it's all out of order, and you end up being set back and having to actually recover. So gap assessment, a method of assessing the differences between the actual performance and expected performance, refers to the gap between where we are, which is your present state, and where we want to be, which is a target state. Really, really read this viral post as many times as possible, so that you get a very good understanding of where each person is, and maybe apply it to where you are in your own life, and see where you have made too many assumptions. See where you have based your current relationship with someone, if it is a relationship, if you have based it on assumptions. Where is the clear language? Because once you have clear, definable language for your relationship, you're not going to have a bunch of gaps, because you both are on the same page. You have not changed your mind about each other. There is no need for violent behavior. If you are trying to get yourselves together individually, it is because you are doing it for self-improvement reasons, not to exit the relationship reasons. If you have a if you're broke, if you don't have a decent job, again, that is you on an individual adult level, working it out on your individual adult level. You're not asking for a bunch of help. You may get some counsel from somebody, but you are trying to work this thing out as an individual. And so when there's clear, definable language regarding a relationship, that you are both on the same page, on the same path, the same belief system, the same strategies, you you will likely not have to conduct a gap assessment about your belief system concerning the relationship. Now, later you may have to conduct a gap assessment concerning your finances, whether or not you both should have a prenup, what other types of strategies do you, whether or not you should live together, whether or not you should wait until marriage. So then you would have to conduct a gap assessment later. But it makes it easier when you are on the same page that you are together. In this regard, this man is not with his current girlfriend. No matter what he says, he's physically with her, but he's not emotionally connected to her. And he's definitely not in his heart towards her if he's thinking about violent behavior. So I want you to think about this. You can visit my website, reginayfavors.com, to read blog articles and for other types of tips to get an understanding about these. I do talk a lot about gap assessment, and I apply it to different contexts. So this is my first time applying it to this viral post. Thank you very much for listening.